Welcome to My Money, Your Money, a talk show on generational wealth, wealth management, and personal finance. Now introducing our host, Miss Brigette Lumpkins.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to My Money, Your Money, where we talk about all things related to money. Brought to you by our generous sponsors, Demesman and Dover Accident Attorneys, the AARP, and the Palm Beach Solid Waste Authority. I'm your host, Brigette Lumpkins. I earned an MBA from Wharton, and I've worked at such firms as Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, covering both private and institutional clients, as well as raising capital for private investment funds. I'm pleased to welcome our guest, Lahteefah Parramore, CPA, a partner at Prager Metis, who acquired her entertainment and sports-focused practice a couple of years ago. A graduate of the University of South Florida, she began her career at Ernst & Young, also known as EY, and has also held jobs in industry at record and production companies. La, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. I'm so glad that you could join us today and talk about, something that's really important. So now you focus on entertainment, creatives, athletes in your practice. What inspired you to focus on that group of clients? Did you decide to be an accountant first, or did you decide to be in the industry and then focused on being an accountant as how you would gain access to working in the industry first?
That's actually a great question. I always like to start by what my mother told me growing up. She said I had a natural propensity for business and for money. And I'm like, Ma, how do you mean? What do you mean? She said, when I was as young as 4 years old, I would ask her for her paycheck, like her paycheck that she cashed. So I would take the cash and I would count it all day, 100 different ways. And I remember myself envisioning businesses and things that I could potentially, do with the money, multiply the money, help other people with money. So I knew I wanted to do something that related to money, but also business. And so growing up, like I started my first business when I was 16 years old. It was a not-for-profit with my mom. She is a former professional dancer, ballet, West African modern dance. And that's her passion. She is a creative at heart. And her and I used to always talk about what would be the next steps for her. And so one of her next steps was creating a not-for-profit that helped disadvantaged youth through the cultural arts. The name of that nonprofit is Arts for Life Academy. It's based out of Clearwater, Florida. And so she really pushed me. She actually hired an attorney to do the paperwork, and kind of like the attorney dropped the ball. And she was like, you could do this. You can incorporate, you can do the documents for me. You can, ensure that it's a nonprofit. So it was her pushing me to expand, just expand my mind, expand what I thought my capacity was, even at a young age. So going into college, I thought I wanted to kind of be in business by being a salesperson. So my first major was sales. And then I went into an accounting class, and the professor was like, most people can't get this concept of debits and credits. And I was like, I got the concept right away, debits and credits. And it was a love story of accounting and business from that point. So one of my aunts, while I was in college, one of my aunts said, you should be a CPA if you're going to continue as, in the accounting field. And I said, what's a CPA? And she's like, a certified public accountant, and you should join an organization that has other CPAs so that you can learn. So in college, I joined the National Association of Black Accountants, and then I had a significant amount of mentors. And so one of my mentors was Greg Collins, very well known in the entertainment industry. And so he was one of those individuals that kind of mentored me, and this is what accounting for people in the entertainment industry and creatives are. And so that's really where I started. I started just loving business, and from there loving the theory of accounting, because a lot of people think accounting is math, and it's really, I mean, most of the math is on a calculator.
Right. Or a spreadsheet or in software.
Yes, spreadsheet, so it's more theory and understanding concepts and laws. For instance, many of the, tax laws, it's laws, and it's understanding those laws to be able to apply those in your clients' portfolios and business affairs. So it was really that start of it. And I was very fortunate through the National Association of Black Accountants to be able to be interviewed by Ernst & Young at one of their conferences in college. And so that was, as you mentioned, that's where I cut my teeth, so to speak, in business. And Ernst & Young is a great business school to be a part of, because you learn at a global level, at a local level. You become one of the best just on the kind of on a job training. You're able to apply everything you learn in college times 1,000 in institutions like Ernst & Young. And I'm, always very grateful to have had that experience as well. So that's really my start.
Well, I'm going to do a career series soon about careers in financial services, et cetera. And I think you got to come back and talk even more about your story there. And Ernst & Young, or EY, really does have a stellar reputation for and a great training ground.
So it started with the love of business and accounting, really understanding how you make money in the form of business, because there's so many ways you can make money through stocks and things like that. But in investing and wealth management, like financial planning and things like that. But I really wanted to understand the intricacies of how you run a business and how you're successful at a business. And so, after Ernst & Young, my ex-husband is a Grammy Award-winning music producer, and he always had a record label as well as a music production company and a recording studio. And so I always helped him from the business side. I helped him as well as the artist from the business side. And just working with those artists, I'm like, man, it's so much that they don't know.
Right.
You're really only as knowledgeable, not only as your knowledge, but your team's knowledge.
Right.
And I believe, having a strong team and having the right team is extremely important. And you hear all of these stories. Oh, I had the business manager and I relied on them. But many times, a lot of those business managers actually don't have like true business management experience.
Well, let me interrupt you there. What kind of a team does an artist or a creative need to surround them, or an athlete maybe, need to surround themselves with? Who are the personnel on the team? How big should the team be? And what credentials do they need to have? I think most people know they need an attorney for stuff, right? But what are the other critical members of a team to help an artist run a successful, profitable business, to market their creative content and stay out of trouble with the IRS?
So twofold. One, I think your team evolves as you grow in your career or your artistry, or even as a creative. And so I firmly believe, like, it's funny. I'm like, if you really don't have a business, do you really need a business manager? You may always need someone to help guide you through what you should do, how you should incorporate. And many attorneys that have, been in the entertainment industry for a long time, they're able not only to provide legal advice, but also to be able to help guide them through how their first stages of artistry should look, when they should incorporate a LLC as opposed to just kind of giving people their social security numbers. So it's like foundational things that need to be implemented. And so, for instance, you may need, starting out, of course, an attorney, and then a business manager or a tax specialist that can really help you structure yourself, your artistry, your business in the proper way that provides the most tax advantageous, ways. And then if you're always need a manager or some sort of booking agent to help ensure that the money is coming in, flowing appropriately. And you want to ensure that they have the right connections, right? I always say this is, you want to be an insider or you want to be in the circle of insiders. Because if you are in the circle of insiders, then you're going to get that insider knowledge, that you need to help guide you, through that path. A lot of people, let's say they start out with a close family member managing their finances. And many times they wear multiple hats. They will manage their career as well as manage their finances. But at some point, you really need to bring in a professional that kind of has that experience, has that connection, and is able to kind of take you to that next level. So I think, to answer your question, it just depends on the stage of your artistry or your career.
The composition of your team.
The composition of your team. Because you may, because your family members are going to grind for you, right? So having, let's say there's a lot of mom managers, having your mom as a manager that's in the trenches with you, because she's going to advocate for you like no other, is a perfect way to start. But then what I like to do for my clients that have mom managers, we work very closely together. So it's not saying that, okay, mom, you need to move out the way. I'm a professional. I have experience. I'll do this. No, we're not saying that. Let's work together. I can, show you some things. I can roll up my sleeves and give you the reports on a weekly basis or a daily basis. I can give you screenshots of what's in the bank account. So it's not about moving those people that artists trust out the way. It's just adding another layer of sophistication for the composition of your team.
Okay, so you bring up a really great concept, which is trust. And what I hypothesize might be a motivator for people not really composing ideal teams. You see a lot of artists or athletes out there who kind of get caught up with their business affairs and their money not being right because Pookie and them were in charge of it. And that's their boy from back in the day in high school. And they know they can trust them and they have their back. But Pookie doesn't know anything about taxes. And so therefore 3 years later, you're in a lot of trouble and maybe going to jail for not being current on your taxes. So can you talk about, first of all, am I correct there? Is that a correct assessment? And what is your observation about some of the barriers to composing an effective business overall team around an artist or an entertainer that can help make sure that they are preserving the wealth, not only generating, as you mentioned, like the sort of entertainment manager and booking agent, generating and preserving the wealth?
Well, I think you're correct in two parts. One, so I want to say, yes, I see that a lot where Pookie and them have been helping creatives, artists, athletes, for just entrepreneurs, for many years. And so I have so many people that come to me and say, or new clients that say, oh, well, I haven't done my taxes, in 3 to 4 years and I don't know where they stand. And it's a moment of anxiety, right? And so one of the things is, I think, because they trust Pookie and them, and they might not even have known them directly. But what happens is, what we do as a community is we ask people we know and we trust, hey, where should I get my taxes done? Where should I bank at? Where should I? Because we trust each other. We may not trust the institutions, so to speak, but we trust each other. And so we look to each other. So again, it's almost, you're only as strong as like your circle. So in some instances, you can't really fault people that are, I would say, newer wealth individuals, because they never had this type of money before. No one in their family has had this experience. It's not like they're sitting at the dinner table being able to have these discussions with their family members. In some instances, like I have some clients that are in their teens and they are the first to do it. They are bringing wealth, millions of dollars into their family. And so, and their family members may be on public assistance. So those are not, their family doesn't necessarily know, where to potentially get that help from. So they're going to refer people. In many instances, they may be referring 123 tax down the street that is a tax preparer today, but may not be a tax preparer in a couple of years from now. So so I do see that often, but I never fault the client because they thought they were doing the best at the time. They were going to people they trusted for a referral. And so I think it's important, like shows like this. Your show is extremely important because it's bringing another layer of community and another layer of, these could potentially be people that you can work with. And so that, I would say, 1, 2, people should look for people that have credentials, because I'm a firm believer in credentials. It's very important. My CPA, I tell people all the time, I'm not an accountant, I'm a CPA. Okay. So I took an exam that's harder than a bar.
What's the difference, right? Because CPA is certified public accountant. So the certified public is the distinguishing characteristic of it. And also, I know it's a 4-part exam, et cetera. I know that. But can you share with our audience the different sort of levels of people who might manage your finances, right? From bookkeeper to accountant to CPA.
Yes.
Like the levels at which they're qualified to do different tasks, right? Because I think that that's part of it with the 123 tax preparer issue that you mentioned.
Yes. And so a lot of people, it's interesting that many people, like if I a lot of times when I'm on different forums, people are like, how do I even find a good accountant? And so a CPA, certified public accountant, is, you not only do you go through 4 years of bachelor's degree, you also in many instances are required to receive a master's degree. In addition to that, you have to have several years of work experience in your field. And then you take an exam that, according to my friends that are CPAs and attorneys, is harder than the bar exam. Okay, mind you, this is like 25 years ago. But they probably say that because they may not be, accountant brain thinking, because on the CPA exam, you have a law part. That's one of the 4 parts that you have to take. And so it's similar to an attorney. So there's a different level, not only of training and of learning and of education, and you have to have continual education every year, but it's a code of conduct and how you live and how you conduct yourselves. Like I couldn't go out and just accumulate a bunch of debt. I could be brought before the CPA governing body. And again, as a CPA, you have governing bodies that you report to. I used to sit on the Florida FICPA, Institute of CPAs, where we govern other CPAs in the state of Florida.
So you're saying there's a body of knowledge you're responsible for, that credential represents, that you do have and have been tested and evaluated objectively on, and also accountability to a credentialing board that makes sure that your conduct is becoming a CPA
Yes.
and sort of holds you to a certain standard in terms of ethics. Now, here's something that I think could be a wrinkle, right? So, this show is obviously for us, by us, and I'm really speaking to the Black community here, trying to close the wealth gap. When you talk about the amount of wealth that's generated in the entertainment and sports arenas, that is a huge source of our collective wealth as a community, and some of it is mismanaged and sort of dissipates because of that. But are there enough Black CPAs to go around to service all of the people who have that need in our community, right?
I
Because
think it is.
the trust issue, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it is. I mean, if you were looking for a Black CPA, you could contact National Association of Black Accountants,
Okay.
or just a variety of other similar organizations, and you have a plethora of CPAs that would be able to help you. But if they didn't, let's say, specialize in the exact thing that you did, they would be able to refer you to someone that does. Like, for instance, for me, I don't specialize in real estate, but I have CPAs that specialize in real estate. And that's another thing that we have to think through, because in many instances, I'll have artists or creatives come to me, and maybe they had somebody that may have been credentialized, but didn't specifically have knowledge in the entertainment industry. And I think it's more important. A lot of times people think that the IRS may scrutinize people in the entertainment industry more. I don't necessarily feel that that's true. I just feel like I just, based on my experience, you have to just be careful and understand what deductions you can take, what deductions you can't take, and be able to substantiate some of those deductions,
Okay.
i.e., um, i.e., security, right? So
You mean like a bodyguard?
like a bodyguard,
Okay.
right? Technically, bodyguards that are in your home or are for personal use, even if you are a celebrity, the IRS audit guide says that that is not a tax deduction. If the bodyguard or security is working on behalf of a company to ensure that you're secure when you're at different venues, or if you have a show, of course, that is a valid business expense. Now, we know I have many clients in hip hop, in the urban arena, and we see how many of them have been dying through gun violence.
Yeah.
So a position like, security is one where I help the clients, structure it so that it is a tax deduction.
Okay.
So it's things like that where you have to know not only the tax guide in the entertainment industry, but you also should know the IRS audit guide. It related to the entertainment industry. They have an audit guide. And then reviewing that audit guide to just ensure that those expenses align with that, just in case you are audited. Another
Gotcha.
thing I tell my clients, I'm like, when you no longer popping is when the IRS come. Like when you was making millions of dollars, they like, hey, you good. Listen, 6 years later, they be like, oh, yeah, remember when you had made that money back in the, 6 years ago? Yeah, you owe me now, run that. So that's why it's important to be in compliance. It's so important to be in compliance. And the IRS says that, like, not knowing is not a good enough excuse.
Not as an excuse. So tell me something. What are some of the issues aside from tax issues? Because I think that in the news, we see who's gone to jail, who gets in trouble with their taxes. That's like a familiar refrain, right? So we all know these people made $10 million. They didn't pay any taxes. 3 years later, the tax man comes up and says, run that. But what are some other common issues you find with the balance sheet and income statement, right? Like what people own and owe, and also how they're managing their cash flow that might be unique to the entertainment industry, or something that you can offer some insight as to how to avoid.
Well, one of the things is, especially from one of the things that I see often is the categorization of intellectual property. In many
Okay.
instances, it's not properly classified on the balance sheet.
Okay.
And then from a royalty accounting perspective, that tends to be an issue because, especially if they get advances, they're like, oh, but it's just an advance. And I'm like, yeah, but it's cash in. So you have to be careful as an artist. From a tax perspective, it should be cash based. And then you really have to look
Cash based
at,
versus accrual based is what you're
yes,
saying?
cash based. I was going to say accrual, cash based versus accrual based, because even if you keep your books accrual based, you have to make sure you do proper book to tax adjustments.
Okay.
And then, like, I get this question all the time where if it's one, royalties, right? So cash is king. Either if you earned it or if you got the cash in, you have to disclose it on your P&L.
Right.
And then, however, there's only one exception, is if the contract is written as though it's a loan. So if
Right.
it's written as though it's a loan, then you put it on the balance sheet. But it's things like that that
Right.
we've gone into, clients come to me and they may have had an attorney look at that, but they
Right.
didn't have like a CPA look at that. And that's one of the things, back to who should be on your team.
Right.
So, you have extremely sophisticated attorneys, such as, one of my favorite is Bernie Lawrence Watkins. She's out of Atlanta. She's amazing. She's been in the entertainment industry for over 20 years. And so an attorney like her would be able to provide that guidance, not only from a legal perspective, but kind of also provide, hey, this may be the implications, from an accounting perspective, but she'll always encourage me to join the conversation. She'll say, but talk to La just to make sure. And so you want to make sure those professionals that you're paying, they're not afraid, they're not afraid to be exceptional at what they do. And then they're also not afraid to kind of bring in people when they may not, know everything, or may not be their expertise. And so that's the type of people that you want to have on your team.
Okay. That makes sense. So I have something surprising to tell you, which is we're almost out of time. And I
This
feel
is
like
so
we
much
just got
fun.
started with this conversation. We barely scratched the surface of all of the many things that, I think people who are considering a creative career, or who are in a creative career and maybe need to tighten it up on the books, and so that they can have wealth that endures and and to pass on. So, tell us about you a little bit. How can we find you if someone wants to go deeper and has questions? Where should they find you?
I'm at, my Instagram is La Real Wealth. All of my platforms are La Real Wealth
And
from
that's
a social media.
LAH Real Wealth.
Yes. And
Uh-huh.
then you can contact me at Parramore at pregermedis.com.
Okay.
Or, all my information is there. And
Uh-huh.
I just want to say thank you so much. I'm very grateful to have been on your show. I hope,
Oh, it's
I hope I inspire people. I always pray before I, speak, because I'm like, please, God, allow me to be used as a vessel of light for you, for people in the entertainment industry or want to do business, because I truly believe that is what my gift is. My gift is to help people financially and build wealth. I'm extremely great at it, but it's only through the grace of God and his blessings, and just allowing me to be able, to again impart the knowledge that I have.
Right. Well, we're so glad to have you. And I really have to say, I mean, I did, I know a little bit about public accounting, working in this space, not as a CPA or an accountant for a while, and there are not a lot of Black women who are CPAs out there. And certainly I think this, could be a real opportunity for people who don't know that they can get that advice within the community, that expertise within the community from someone in the community who understands the nuances of their concerns and can help address some of the issues that are specific to what Black entertainers, just like you said, with the whole structuring of the security from our hip hop artists who are vulnerable to, attacks, threats on their life. Just that alone, having that nuanced understanding is huge. And so, it really, I love to see you doing this work because I think it's really, really important. And I hate to see our creatives get taken advantage of or just not be able to enjoy their wealth or pass it on. So thank you so, so much for being with us today. And everybody go see her on Instagram at La Real Wealth.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love being on your show, and please invite me back.
I'm telling you, the career series is coming up. It's going to be soon. So you'll hear from us because I think you have a lot to offer in that regard too. And we can talk in more depth about that. Please watch our other MIA Media Group shows Mondays, The Business of Black Business with Jay Reynolds at 1 p.m. Tuesdays at 7 p.m., My Money, Your Money with yours truly, Brigette Lumpkins. Wednesday, Soul at 7 p.m. with Nikki Gellin. Thursdays, Lunch with Legacy Leaders with Anne-Marie Sorrell at 12 noon and Flavor of South Florida at 7 p.m. with the legendary chef Irie. And we have a new show, Fridays at 2 p.m., Black Health, hosted by Dr. Michelle Kerwan. Thanks for joining us, and let's work together to close that gap.